Hello and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Campbell Florence.
And today we're talking about the movie Freaky. So I know that everything is going back into lockdown, and we took a chance. We looked at a later showing of Freaky on Friday the 13th, which today is, on opening day, and the theater was near empty. We bought the top upper left-hand corner so that no one would be breathing on us. We wore our masks. There were 4 other people in the theater and a couple way off to the right, middle, way down in front left, and we felt safe. So I know it's not everyone's cup of tea to try to go to a movie right now, and maybe everything will get shut down even by the time this airs, but we were able to see Freaky on opening day on Friday the 13th, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it was a really good movie. I haven't seen any movie in the theater for a long time, and I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it's been since, we did see Come Play, which we're going to talk about in another segment, but that was like our test to see, like, okay, could this work and how safe is everyone being? And P.S., everyone's being super safe. But since then, we haven't seen a movie since March, like the first weekend in March when we saw The Invisible Man.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That seems so long ago now.
It seems like a lifetime ago. I know someone on Twitter posted today, like, hey, guess what? The Invisible Man came out this year. So when we're recording this, the past week, literally the past 7 days, has felt like a year. And because we just knew the election results last Saturday, and, you know, it's Friday the 13th when we're recording this. And so also by the recording of this time, Trump has not conceded.
Yeah.
Not great, Bob. So, anyway, we're going to talk about Freaky, and we will be giving away some spoilers. So, after this initial review, if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, then stop listening. But I freaking loved it.
Yeah. It was, like I said before, I haven't seen a movie in a while, and it really lived up to my expectations.
Oh, good. Okay, so we're going to go through the kills because it was so gory and so amazing. And the very first kill, if you don't know the premise, it's kind of like Freaky Friday, and this is why it was perfect to come out on Friday the 13th, and because it was based on Friday the 13th. You know, the date was important in this premise. The very first kill, there's these 4 teens hanging out, and this guy gets a broken wine bottle shoved down his throat. That was disgusting and gory and epic.
Yeah. I've never seen that kind of kill before.
It was very weird and cool. The next girl gets killed by her head getting bludgeoned with a toilet seat.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That was also pretty gory.
It was so disgusting, and in a good way, because, you know, I don't mind my gore in a horror comedy, especially. The guy on the tennis court, he gets a broken tennis racket through each side of his skull.
Oh yeah. It's funny because then it looks like it's put back together.
Yes, it's sort of like the arrow through the head thing that Steve Martin used to do in his stand-up. And then finally, the final girl, not the final girl, but the last girl in this opening sequence, she gets impaled on a spike on the wall. Now, this is where all the weird stuff happens. This guy, the father of this house, collects ancient artifacts and is a collector. And so there's all these masks on the wall, and you notice that a mask is missing. So that's what Vince Vaughn is wearing, the serial killer. And also he ends up taking this knife, which is the whole premise for them being able to swap bodies.
Yeah, I think they said it was like some knife. I don't remember exactly, but something about like the ancient Aztecs used that knife or something for sacrifices back when they existed.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I think even when I'm skipping ahead, but the initial stabbing, we saw it, like the moon got covered by clouds and it transformed to look like they were on top of an Aztec. Were they considered pyramids or?
I don't know.
Well, I will just say an Aztec ruin. I mean, I know they're not ruins in that time period, but. So the next kill doesn't happen for a while, but in the meantime, we get set up with this cast of characters that are lovely. First of all, know that this movie right now is currently 84% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It had the writer, Christopher Landon and Michael Kennedy, and Christopher Landon directed it. It was rated R, and I was thinking initially that it was rated PG-13, and my 13-year-old came, but it's definitely rated R because there's some sexual content, but there's definitely a lot of gore, and there were plenty of F words.
Yeah, there were a lot of swearing as well,
but it was fine. Okay, so we get set up with this cast of characters. Millie, which I love, we get introduced to her, and she wakes up in the morning and she kisses her Brendan Urie poster every morning from Panic at the Disco, and I love that. I could relate to her, and it was super sweet. And then she ends up getting picked up by her best friends, a gay man and a black girl, and one of the funniest lines in cinematic history, she's talking to this black man who has a wiener dog, and the gay guy yells out the window, "I love your black wiener," and it was so freaking funny.
Yeah.
Campbell, you don't have to comment, but I was just laughing so hard. So we set up this trio. She's super timid. She's shy. Like, people are shoving her in the hallway. Girls are being mean to her. People are making fun of her. And we know that she has a love interest called Booker, but we don't know, if he could possibly be interested in her. She seems so timid and shy.
Yeah, and also in the beginning they set up that she's weak. Like, at the breakfast table, she can't open that, I think it's a jar of jam that she can't open, and she has to have her sister, who is a police officer, open it for her.
And I also liked how, without dialogue, just with visuals and a look, they were able to establish that the mom has a drinking problem because the sister, the cop, sees an empty bottle of wine in the garbage, and she just gives the mom a look, and the mom looks ashamed back. But we find out later they've all been going through a hard time because the dad died a year previously. So just a good subtle backstory. They didn't hit us over the head with it. It was enough. One of the mean girls. Oh wait, we need to talk about how they actually switched bodies.
Yeah, let's get to that first. So how they switched bodies was, let me remember. Oh yeah, so when the guy killed those 4 teens at that house, he stole that knife, and how it works, they explained, is it's like a sacrifice knife, and if the sacrifice doesn't work, I don't remember exactly, but if it doesn't work, then the people switch bodies. So he was trying to just sacrifice her, but I guess maybe since she couldn't kill her, maybe that's why they switched bodies. That might be it, but I'm not completely sure.
Yeah, I don't know the semantics of it all either, but hey, it worked, and it was super funny and amazing. So she goes back home, and we're like, wait, have they switched bodies yet? And he goes back to his lair. We find out they haven't switched until it's actually the next day, and he wakes up in her body. First clue, it's not them. She doesn't kiss her Brendan Urie poster, and then she's looking at her hands, and she touches her own boobs, which I guess a guy being in a female body would do. But she goes down to breakfast, and she almost murdered. Well, sorry, I'm going to start using pronouns correctly, which they mention in the movie. He almost murders the sister, but the mom takes the knife out of her hand, and the acting is so great. Both the lead female and Vince Vaughn did a great job at embodying the other person's character.
Yeah, they really did a good job, made it believable that actually happened.
So when Millie gets to school, it's actually the serial killer. He ends up killing one of the mean girls in a cryo chamber. Like, a cryo chamber is apparently used for like getting cold and like helping your muscles heal. I don't know if a cryo chamber would actually get this cold, but this girl ended up freezing to death.
Yeah, it says on the thing that it goes down to negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then when she comes out, like, when I guess she, well, it's a serial killer, but she's inside of his body now. When she, like, tries to, like, taps her to see, she falls over and just, like, crumbles into a bunch of pieces of just, I guess, frozen body.
That was a pretty cool scene and a pretty cool kill. Also, like, the shop teacher was being kind of mean to Millie, and I'm like, oh no, I bet he's gonna kill him with like shop tools, and it didn't disappoint. He ended up stabbing him in the neck, and then putting him through that saw. Like, what?
Yeah, cutting. That was probably one of the most goriest, besides, I guess, the wine bottle one, where he pushes him through that saw and cuts him in half.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. And a shout out to the actor. I can't think of his name right now, but it's Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and also he's in Succession. So they end up through. I'm only going by. I've only listed the kills down on my notes because I wanted to go through it, and we won't go through every plot point. But I wanted to talk about the kills because I feel like they were pretty epic. They end up going to this party because the serial killer lures everyone there, and everyone who they set up who ended up dying was problematic in some way. So you don't. Necessarily feel too sorry for them. And in a horror comedy too, I guess that's sort of par for the course. But there's these three guys who are surrounding Millie's body, and the serial killer ends up hitting one of them over the head, slitting another one's throat, and then killing one of them with a chainsaw.
Yeah, it was off screen, but what I think happened was she just chainsawed him up, pretty much.
Yeah, it was pretty gory, and they all died. And then there was another problematic guy who lured the gay bestie. I can't remember his character's name right now. And he tried to kiss him, and he's like, "No, I'm not into that." And he called him a slur, and then a hook came out from behind him and stabbed him in the eye, and it was, of course, the serial killer. So there was this great sequence because you think, oh, yep, they've got him trapped, they're going to get him now. And even for a while, he was tied up in the guy's house, and that didn't work out. And they're at the police station and everywhere. And then finally, you think it's over, but we as horror fans know it's never over until it's over. You think, okay, he's on his way to the hospital. He's been stabbed, and we think he's died, but actually he just took his monitor off, and he's still alive, and he comes back.
Yep, and then he breaks into the house, and then there's a really suspenseful scene where Millie, that's now back in her own body, is just like slowly going around the house, and it's pretty creepy.
It was so good, and Campbell just kept saying, "Oh boy," like out loud, which is also a fun thing about. I'm not saying rush out and see a movie during the pandemic, but if you can find an empty theater or rent one, and there's hardly anybody there, you can actually talk to each other in whispered hushes, and probably no one is close enough to hear it. So we're not going to give everything else away. I just know that I enjoyed this movie thoroughly. Let's rank it, Campbell, on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. We need to pick a scale.
I have an idea. How about like that sacrificial knife, like 10 of those sacrificial knives?
Yes, it's out of the sacrificial knives. How many do you give Freaky?
I don't know if it's just that I haven't seen a movie in a while, but I give it 10.
Guess what? I'm giving it 10 out of 10 as well. I think it was, and you know me, I love my horror comedies, but I think it was a perfect horror comedy. Like, good job. They were inclusive. They had a diverse cast. It was female power. It had a great ending, but also like it could be left open for sequels because the sacrificial knife is still out there, which, you know, there could be more movies.
Yeah, just with a different killer now.
Exactly. So when it's safe, and I know November 30th, by the time this will air after that, but November 30th, I think this will be on video on demand, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Next, we're going to hear from Meg about something she's read lately in the world of horror.
Woo! Welcome to Meg's Spooky Book Corner for more book suggestions. As you know, I'm going to try not to give too many spoilers away because I want you to go out and buy this book. So we're talking about a nonfiction book today, but it has a very fiction feel to it. In fact, I'd kind of say it has kind of an in cold blood sort of taste flavor to it, because while there is obviously the factual and realistic sense to it, there's also a construction of the mood and the feeling and the of place and also character. So yes, it is nonfiction, but I think it reads more like a fiction book, which is definitely a compliment. I very much like it. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the book America's First Female Serial Killer, Jane Toppan and the Making of a Monster by Mary Kay McBrayer. And you can find this book anywhere and everywhere. It is Mango Publishing, which I think is kind of cute. It has a cute little mango on the back. And speaking of the back, there's lots of great blurbs about this book. And that is no surprise because I very much enjoyed it. In fact, I don't know if I've done this like since high school, but I actually read this book in one day. That I usually don't have time for. I'm not as fast a reader as Kelly. Kelly can do that all the time. She can finish a book in a day. That doesn't occur to me very often. So this is a big deal. One reason I read it in a day is because I'm doing research on the science of serial killers. And that's one thing that drew me to it is I wanted to write about Jane Toppan, who is the subject of the book and who I'm writing a chapter on. And that coupled with the fact that I already had heard about the book and was interested in it just because it's called America's First Female Serial Killer. What need I say more? So, of course, I wanted to read it. And then I contacted Mary Kay McBrayer because I'm always looking for interesting subjects to interview. And I'm interviewing her for Science of Serial Killers. So it all worked together. And so how could I not sit and read this book cover to cover in one day? So the other reason is because it's extremely compelling. And like I said, it has this way of telling the story. Radium Girls is another example of a nonfiction book I read recently that is just written in a way that feels very story driven. Sometimes, you can read these books and they can feel a little bit dry. But in this case, I very much enjoy how she not only brings the story forward, but she brings Jane Toppan forward. And she gives us more to chew on than just, okay, yes, she was a serial killer, but there's more to the story. And her past is, so fascinating. And there's all these aspects, it's called The Making of a Monster. And of course, that's just something that we, through research for the science of serial killers, we're coming to understand the creation of these, evil people and how it's not so simple and how it's different in every case. And so she not only talks about Jane Toppan, but she's also talking about women and, the roles they had at that time and what life was like for them then and, the opportunities or lack thereof that they had. And so it's a comprehensive book for that time. in America. It also touches on racism. Jane Toppin is Irish, and she deals with a lot of racism that I didn't even realize was rampant at that time in New England. So there's just so much to learn. But then there's also, for the people like myself who are just fascinated with murder, there's lots of that. and not just murder, but I mean brutal murder of, people that she's known her whole life too, which is a little more, it's a little more brutal than, a serial killer who picks strangers out. So it's just fascinating. And I really hope you give it a chance. Mary Kay McBrayer. I follow her on Twitter, and she seems like a cool gal. And we're kind of going through the process of interview right now. And she's just awesome. And I'm so excited to see the rest of her answers, because I think she's going to have a lot of interesting insight into not only Jane Toppin, but just serial killers, female serial killers, and how they are portrayed in the media. So I'm excited to add that into Science of Serial Killers. So if you like to read about, Belle Gunness, if you like to read about any sort of serial killer, if you've read Hell's Princess, if you've read Radium Girls and you like that, even though that has a lot less murder in it. Well, no, does it though? Radium Girls actually is murder if you think about it. But if you like your true crime with a side of history, and if you particularly like females involved as the killer, then you're very much going to like this book. It's written beautifully. I love the voice that's used in it. It just, it's poetic sometimes. And it very much, you can definitely feel that McBrayer did a lot of research and knows her stuff. So she knows what she's talking about. So I very much... I'm telling you, it's required reading. Go out there and get America's First Female Serial Killer, Jane Toppin and the Making of a Monster by Mary Kay McBrayer.
Okay, our last segment, we're going to talk about the movie that we saw last weekend, which was Come Play. Now, this movie had a unique premise. There's a boy who is autistic, and he isn't able to verbalize his words, and so he uses an app, or he uses his iPad, his device, to communicate. And there's this creepy story that ends up showing up on his iPad, and it's about Larry. Now, this movie is only 55% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that might be a little harsh, but it was written and directed by Jacob Chase. And I actually enjoyed it, but let's talk about it. Campbell, what are your thoughts about Come Play?
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. I really liked how the kid was watching SpongeBob and how, I guess, spoiler alert, how in that one part, Larry gave him that sponge.
And actually, SpongeBob kept coming into play, and the mom even used the SpongeBob theme song in order to connect with her son towards the end of the movie. Remember that, Campbell?
Oh, yeah. When they were under the bed and all the Larrys were coming out of all the screens.
Oh my God, so creepy. So I love this premise. I love that this creature is just looking for a friend, and if you take his hand, you'll be his friend forever. And he peeks through windows because windows are doors, and it's just set up perfectly that you're just constantly looking around the entire screen. That's why it's fun to see it in a theater, because you have to physically almost turn your head to see the entire screen instead of a TV screen. But also, whenever he would appear or start to come alive, the lights would flicker. And so right now, every time a light flickers in our house, we're all like, oh boy.
Yeah, and another thing is, I remember when I got home and I was talking to my little sister Vienna. She came to see it with us. She was talking about how it was similar to SCP-096.
What does that mean?
There's this, it's kind of difficult to explain. there's like this, I guess, like made up thing called the SCP Foundation, and the SCPs are like creatures or entities that like cannot be explained, and SCP-096 is pretty much Larry, except you can actually see him in the real world, and if you see SCP-096's face, he will chase you until he rips you apart.
Oh, Lord. Okay. So, yes, we did bring Vienna, and we brought her with the caveat of, okay, you can eat your popcorn and drink your pop, and we brought her iPad and earbuds, and she's like, no, I'm watching this, and she freaking loved it. Like, she also is pretty hardcore, though, and she can handle horror, and she's seen some other movies, and she's not frightened by them, so she's pretty freaking brave.
Yeah, she really is.
So something I appreciated about the movie is that the parents have this complicated relationship. The mom, spoiler alert, the mom ends up sacrificing herself for her child, and it was all very lovely, and I really enjoyed it. It was freaky and creepy, and maybe not as good as Freaky, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a really good movie. And like I said before, with Freaky, I haven't seen movies in a lot of movies in the theater since, I guess, March. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really good movie.
So there's this one thing that I had forgotten, and then Campbell reminded me of the next day. But the kid has one of those like sticky things. What are those called?
I don't remember, but it's like a stick, like those.
It's almost like a yo-yo, but it's sticky, and you like stick it to the wall and stuff.
Yeah, like those things. Like you put it around your finger and like you throw it forward and like sticks to the wall or the ceiling. We got some of those for Halloween. I remember I kept getting stuck to the ceiling, and I had to get a chair to get it down.
So the thing that the kid does in the movie is he's using that, and at one point it actually sticks to Larry, but there's nothing there. It's kind of like the Invisible Man that way. And it was so creepy. And then so Campbell started using his the next day, and he's like, what if it stuck to someone? I'm like, stop it! That would be so scary. Okay, so we need to rank this movie on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it, 10 being you think it's a perfect movie. We need to pick a scale. I mean, we were just talking about those sticky things, but we know what they're called. Is there a perfect scale though?
Let me think. Maybe like electronics, because that's like the window that Larry comes through, and there's a bunch of Larrys at the end.
Or like flickering light bulbs?
Oh, flickering light bulbs. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay, how many flickering light bulbs do you give Come Play?
I give it 8. It was a really good movie. I think Freaky was better, but this was still a really good movie. I really enjoyed it.
That's exactly what I'm also giving Come Play. I'm giving it an 8. Maybe it's not a perfect movie, but I think it's better than 55%. And I realize too that maybe the Rotten Tomatoes scales are shifted right now because not everyone can see movies early or in the theater or whatever it may be. So if it's safe, friends, enjoy some movies on demand in the theater if it's safe or however you can enjoy them. And be well. Until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
See you in the horror section.